Odysseus, a tapestry woven with the threads of salt and storm, gripped the weathered helm of his ship, the Ithaca. The once proud vessel, now a battered testament to their 10-year odyssey, groaned under the relentless assault of the unforgiving sea. A thick fog, the color of despair, clung to them like a spectral shroud, obscuring the path ahead. An unnatural stillness hung in the air, broken only by the rhythmic creak of the ship and the ragged gasps of his weary crew. Suddenly, a tremor, not of the sea, but of the soul, rippled through the men. Their eyes, dull with exhaustion, flickered with a spark of something else entirely, a nascent hope, a yearning for something beyond the endless expanse of grey. Then it began. A sound, unlike any they had ever encountered, caressed the air. It wasn't a song, not in the traditional sense, but a melody woven from moonlight and spun with silken promises. It seeped into their ears, bypassing logic and reason, and burrowed deep into their hearts. The melody sang of forgotten pleasures, of hearth and home, of laughter echoing in sun-drenched courtyards. It spoke of solace, a balm for their years of hardship, a release from the crushing weight of their endless journey. It was the voice of their deepest desires, amplified and weaponized, a siren's song designed to lure them to their doom. Odysseus, his heart a battlefield of conflicting emotions, recognized the danger all too well. Legends whispered of these creatures, the Sirens, whose beauty was as legendary as their cruelty. They resided on a treacherous island shrouded in perpetual mist, their voices luring unsuspecting sailors onto the jagged rocks that encircled their domain. Their laughter, a chilling counterpoint to the screams of the doomed, was a constant reminder of the price of succumbing to their hypnotic call. Panic, a cold serpent, coiled itself around the crew's hearts. Eurylochus, his steadiest hand, gripped the helm with a vice-like grip, his face a mask of silent terror. The other men, their faces contorted in a grotesque tableau of longing and fear, fumbled for their swords, a futile gesture against an unseen enemy. Odysseus, though burdened by the weight of his past and the uncertainty of the future, had a plan, a desperate gamble etched in the lines on his weathered face. He barked orders, his voice hoarse but laced with unflinching resolve. With practiced efficiency, his crew, their faces contorted in a mixture of fear and determination, plugged their ears with beeswax, their expressions a silent plea for Odysseus to show the same restraint. But Odysseus couldn't afford such protection. He yearned to hear the song, not for its promises but to understand the weapon he faced. He needed to pierce its alluring facade, to find the discordant note that would snap his men out of its thrall. He ordered his men to lash him tightly to the mast, his pleas to join the revelry muffled by their determined silence. As the ship drifted closer to the source of the song, the melody intensified. It became a symphony of temptation, each note a meticulously crafted arrow aimed at his deepest vulnerabilities. It spoke of Penelope's wife, her hair the color of spun gold, her laughter like wind chimes on a summer evening. It spoke of Telemachus, his son, a man now, his face etched with worry, his eyes searching the horizon for a ship that might never return. It spoke of a life he had almost forgotten, a life that seemed as distant as a dream. Odysseus strained against his bonds, a primal scream trapped in his throat. The song offered a sweet escape, a refuge from the endless cycle of hardship and uncertainty. Tears welled up in his eyes, a dangerous counterpoint to the cold fear that snaked through him. But then, a shift in the melody, a discordant note, sharp and jarring, pierced the seductive harmony. It spoke of betrayal, of blood-soaked sands, of a wife lost in despair if he succumbed to the siren's call. The image of his fallen comrades flashed before him, their faces etched with accusation, their lifeless eyes a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. Shame, a searing brand, replaced the longing in his heart. With a final, Herculean effort, Odysseus dug his heels into the deck, his muscles screaming in protest. He willed the ship onward, away from the siren's song and the promise of oblivion. The melody began to recede, replaced by the gnashing of waves against the treacherous rocks they had narrowly avoided. Exhausted and shaken, Odysseus slumped against the mast, the ropes biting into his flesh. The crew, their faces pale and drawn, slowly began to remove the wax from their ears, the world rushing back in a cacophony of sound. Relief and a dawning relief and a dawning horror washed over them. The stench of brine and decay hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the fate they had so narrowly escaped. The jagged rocks, now visible through the thinning fog, gleamed with an unnatural sheen, littered with the wreckage of countless ships and the bleached bones of unfortunate sailors. The crew, shaken to their core, looked at Odysseus with a mixture of awe and gratitude. Eurylochus, his voice choked with emotion, spoke for them all. "My lord Odysseus, you have saved us once again. We were but puppets dancing to the tune of those foul creatures. How can we ever repay such a debt?" Odysseus, his voice rough with the aftereffects of the song's assault, forced a smile. "We fight on, my friends. We fight for Ithaca, for Penelope, for Telemachus, for every dream we hold dear. The Sirens may have been defeated, but our journey is far from over. There will be more trials, more temptations, but as long as we hold on to each other, and the fire in our hearts burns bright, we will prevail." His words, laced with the conviction of a man who had stared into the abyss and emerged unbroken, reignited a spark of hope in the crew's eyes. They set about their tasks with renewed vigor, the memory of the Sirens serving as a chilling reminder of the price of weakness. As they sailed on, a heavy silence descended upon the ship. The encounter had taken its toll. The men, haunted by the echoes of the song, grappled with the darkness it had exposed within themselves. Odysseus, too, bore the scars of the battle. The song had not just spoken of his deepest desires, but also of his regrets, his failings. He had seen himself reflected in the song's cruel mirror, and the image was not entirely pleasing. Days bled into weeks, the sun a relentless reminder of their seemingly endless journey. The encounter with the Sirens, however, had cast a long shadow. The once jovial camaraderie amongst the crew had been replaced by a quiet introspection. Conversations were muted, punctuated by long, contemplative silences. One starlit night, as Odysseus stood alone at the helm, lost in the vast expanse of the ocean, a haunting melody drifted on the wind. It was faint, barely a whisper, compared to the full-throated siren song he had faced before. Yet it sent a shiver down his spine. Was it a trick of the wind? A figment of his imagination still reeling from the encounter? Or was it a final, desperate attempt by the Sirens to lure him astray? He strained to hear, his heart pounding in his chest. But the melody, like a dream fading with the coming dawn, vanished without a trace. Odysseus, forever marked by his encounter with the Sirens, knew that the true test lay not just in resisting their song, but in confronting the darkness it revealed within himself. He had a long way to go, not just across the physical ocean, but also the vast sea of his own desires and regrets. The Sirens may have been defeated, but the battle within had just begun.